There is always an inherent danger with professional wrestling anytime someone steps into the ring. But when you add the word extreme to the equation, you unfortunately do not get wrestling accompanied by some radical guitar riffs, but rather you get the danger being cranked up to 11. Sometimes that danger becomes too much to handle, and sometimes these matches blur the lines of pro wrestling and go way too far. Nobody likes to see wrestlers get hurt. Unless you do, in which case I may suggest therapy, but often enough we have seen hardcore matches, death matches, and everything in between quickly devolve into something much more grim. I think I would just prefer the guitar riffs, honestly. I'm Denise Salcedo, hailing from partsFUNknown, and these are 10 extreme wrestling matches that went too far. And before we get on with our list, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss a partsFUNknown list, and stay tuned till the end to find out where you can find more of my content too. Number 10, The Rock vs. Mankind I Quit match, Royal Rumble 1999. We start our list with one of the most well-known matches in WWE history. After losing the WWF title, The Rock looked to regain the gold against Mankind at Royal Rumble 1999 in an I Quit match. Mankind, better known as Mick Foley, is a name that you will see on this list a few times and is no stranger to extreme contest. However, his threshold for pain was put to the test this evening. The Rock handcuffed Foley's hands behind his back and wailed on him with 11 unprotected steel chair shots. The sound and number of these are horrible, but the Beyond the Mat movie added to the horror by filming Mick's wife and kids in the crowd having to watch this all go down. Mankind came away with some stitches, but the long impact of those shots would be a contributing factor into Foley deciding to retire the following year. Number 9, Nick Gage vs. David Arquette, GCW Joey Janela's LA Confidential. From one match in a wrestling documentary to another, this is a death match that could have ended with death. Nick Gage is another man that has been in his fair share of extreme bouts that went way too far. More on that later, but his bout with David Arquette at GCW Joey Janela's LA Confidential is one of the most often discussed. As told on Nick Gage's Dark Side of the Ring episode, the two men went out for steaks on Arquette and discussed having a death match. But David didn't want to be cut open. Well, Gage had different plans in mind. The MDK leader used light tubes and a pizza cutter to draw blood from the former WCW champion. When Arquette fired back, this only angered Gage and made him use a piece of one of the broken light tubes to cut the actor's neck. Nick Gage responded with, "Oh I killed David Arquette." The multi-time GCW World Champion quickly judo threw Arquette down and pinned him. David bolted out of the ring and to Luke Perry's car to rush to the hospital with Jungle Boy in the back seat. The entire match and aftermath was documented in the You Cannot Kill David Arquette film. Number 8, New Jack vs. Gypsy Joe, independent show in 2003. Here we have another one of the deathmatch most wanted in the late great original gangsta New Jack. The ECW alum has had a fair share of bouts that have gone terribly wrong. More on that later. This is just one of them that got a lot of attention for such a small setting. New Jack worked an independent show in 2003 against the 69-year-old Gypsy Joe. During the early moments of the match, Joe started no-selling New Jack's offense, which didn't sit well with one half of the gangstas. The crowd chanting racial slurs and an older woman hitting him with a purse set New Jack over the edge to a beating on his opponent. He started throwing chairs at Gypsy Joe and grabbed a baseball bat to hit Joe over the head with. The match got so out of hand that it almost called a near riot before it was eventually called off. Number 7, Cactus Jack vs. Terry Funk ECW House Show, October 28, 1995. There goes Mrs. Foley's baby boy again, this time under his Cactus Jack persona. He faced his career rival Terry Funk on an October 28, 1995 ECW house show. Despite the two men being the best of friends, they always went at each other like two competitors who hated one another. On this night in Philadelphia, Foley and Funk busted out a flaming steel chair to brutalize their bodies. However, this incident didn't end up going wrong for the two wrestlers in the ring. Instead, it was a fan who claimed they were burned, trying to pat out flames on the fuel-soaked towel that was wrapped around the chair. That fan filed a lawsuit against ECW. It was eventually dropped, but this could be described as maybe going a little too far into the extreme that could have made the company pay long-term. Number 6. New Jack vs. Vic Grimes Living Dangerously 2000 and the rematch Scaffold Match XPW. Yeah, another New Jack match. Another time things were taken too far. This story can't be told without talking about both of his infamous battles with Vic Grimes. At ECW Living Dangerously 2000, the original gangsta faced Baldy's member, Vic Grimes, in a typically New Jack style match. Dr. Dre and Ice Cube's natural born killers, blaring weapons flying, and one big dive off something high. However, the last part turned out nearly fatal on this night. A breakdown in communication between New Jack and Grimes led to both men tumbling off a 20-foot-high scaffolding rig onto concrete. Vic landed on Jack with the ECW legend suffering brain damage and was permanently blinded in his right eye afterwards. To say the least, New Jack never forgot and wanted revenge after what could be called the Danbury Fall. Vengeance came over a year later in Extreme Pro Wrestling when the two men faced each other in a scaffold match. New Jack tells the story during his Dark Side of the Ring episode that he went to a pawn shop to purchase a stun gun. Once on top of the scaffolding, Jack tased Vic Grimes to the point that he couldn't feel his legs. The ECW alum tossed off the 40-foot-high structure with Vic's body just a foot from missing the ring completely. Grimes bounced off the ropes and back into the ring in a horrifying sight. Number 5. Manny Fernandez vs. Invader Number 3, WWC 1989. This one is not talked about nearly as much as it should. The World Wrestling Council in Puerto Rico has seen some of the bloodiest wars the business has ever seen. Despite being the stage for several of Abdullah the Butcher and Bruiser Brody's battles, nothing was like Manny Fernandez vs. Invader Number 3. During this match, Fernandez came off the top rope with a massive knee drop to Invader's midsection that ruptured his stomach cavity. This caused Invader Number 3 to vomit blood all over the ring. Manny went back up for 2 more knee drops as he continued to spit up blood as well. This sparked controversy with many fans believing it was a work, but the incident led to real-life beef between Fernandez and WWC booker Jose Gonzalez. Manny has gone on the record to say this brutal incident was revenge for the death of Bruiser Brody that occurred in the locker room of the promotion on Gonzalez's watch. Number 4. Sabu and the Sheik vs. Atsushi Onita and Tarzan Goto, Flaming Barbed Wire Match FMW May 1992. This is called the most dangerous match ever, and it's for good reason. The Frontier Martial Arts Wrestling Promotion, aka FMW, was known for chaotic atmospheres and grueling bloodbaths with unique hardcore matches that set the company apart from the rest of the industry. In May 1992, Sabu teamed up with the 65-year-old uncle, the legendary Sheik, against FMW Ace founder Atsushi Onita and Tarzan Goto in a match where the ring was surrounded by fire. This wasn't like the WWE Inferno matches either. The fire was set on the fabric that eventually caught the ropes. Within a few minutes, the outdoor show turned into a near disaster with the wind picking up and making the flames out of control. The wrestlers were all in serious danger and had to be called off 2 minutes in. Sabu was the first to escape with the other competitors following. However, his uncle, the Sheik, suffered horrific burns to the back while leaving the ring. Number 3. Nick Gage vs. Thumbtack Jack CZW Tournament of Death 7. The CZW Tournament of Death is one of the most famed deathmatch tournaments in the business. The 7th edition saw maybe one of the scariest incidents in wrestling history. It was Thumbtack Jack versus Nick Gage. This one didn't work out in Gage's favor like his bout against David Arquette. In one spot during the match, Thumbtack Jack threw Nick Gage into the light tubes like you usually see in death matches. However, this looked to be fatal when one light tube ended up going through Gage's armpit where major arteries are. Two of his arteries were sliced to the point that Nick was bleeding profusely. He nearly bled to death on this night. It was immediately clear that the future GCW World Champion was in critical danger with blood seeping through his vest. Gage was so hyped up in the adrenaline that he demanded the medical nurse to just tape him up. But the nurse and CZW management didn't listen and rushed the star to a hospital. The match was declared a no contest due to the severity of this injury. This took the legend of Nick Gage to the next level and made him the deathmatch icon that he is today. Number 2. The Undertaker vs. Mankind, Hell in a Cell, WWF King of the Ring 1998. Talk about a historic wrestling match that went too far, but helped the careers of both competitors involved. We go back to King of the Ring 1998 when The Undertaker faced Mankind inside Hell in a Cell. The two stars had put a legendary feud before this bout ever began, but this got out of hand almost immediately. Mick Foley decided he wanted his cell match to be different than the original with Shawn Michaels and started the fight on top of the steel structure. Just a few minutes later, Taker tossed Foley off of the 20-foot high cell into the commentary table below in one of the most dangerous spots ever seen in the business. If the match ended there, everyone would have understood. But yeah, this is Mrs. Foley's baby boy we are talking about. Instead of being stretchered out of the building, Mankind refused medical attention and made his way back up the cell to continue the fight with the dead man. Just a few moments later, The Undertaker chokeslammed Foley through the cage roof to the mat below in a sickening bump that may have hurt more than the first. And yet, nope, that didn't end the match either. Mick Foley showed his pain threshold is unlike anyone in the history of the business. The visual of Mankind smiling while bleeding with his tooth in his nose is still in everyone's memories to this day. Number 1. Mass Transit and Devon Dudley vs. the Gangstas, ECW House Show, November 23rd, 1996. This had to be on the list, and there is no better place to discuss it than at the top. It is probably the key example of an extreme contest that went too far that many fans thought of when looking at this title. On an ECW house show in November 1996, Axel Rotten was scheduled to team with Devon Dudley against the Gangstas of Mustafa Said and, you guessed it, New Jack. Rotten had a family emergency, so a 17-year-old untrained wrestler, Eric Kulas, known as Mass Transit, convinced ECW owner and booker Paul Heyman to have him take Axel's place by lying about his age and training under Killer Kowalski. Before the match, Kulas asked New Jack to blade him during the bout as he had never done it himself before, with the original Gangsta agreeing. The match was supposed to be a squash, but the Gangstas decided to perform a brutal 2-on-1 beatdown due to Mass Transit being over-exuberant in the locker room before the bout. After telling Devon Dudley to stay on the outside, New Jack pummeled Kulas with various weapons and then used a surgical scalpel to blade the young man. However, Jack cut too deep and severed 2 arteries in Kulas' forehead. Eric's father from the crowd screamed, "Ring the bell, he's 17," as the Gangstas continued their beatdown. What would be called the Mass Transit incident led to New Jack being charged with assault and battery with a dangerous weapon and sued by the Kulas family. It also got ECW's first pay-per-view, Barely Legal, canceled from its original scheduled date of Christmas Eve, 1996, before Heyman begged to get it rescheduled for April 1997. New Jack was acquitted by a jury and found not liable due to the circumstances surrounding the situation. Thank you guys so much for watching 10 Extreme Wrestling matches that went too far. I'm Denise Salcedo. You guys can follow me on Twitter and or on Instagram at @Denise Salcedo. And you can also check me out on youtube.com/Denise Salcedo. Thank you guys, and I'll see you next time.